My name's Dave Boothroyd and I'm Professor of Media and Culture here in the School of Film and Media. We've just been having a participatory media research showcase day, and one of the things that's distinctive about the kind of research that we do in the school is that we are interested in what can be done with media. We're interested in what is being done with media, what might be done in the future with media. So the participatory theme, it's both to do with looking at what people produce collectively. That's not necessarily internet digital culture. It might also be in the form of, analog media being used in new participatory ways. But the participatory dimension of media is something that I think once it's become the norm to be familiar with the way that the internet works and think that everybody can contribute, then it's causing people to think again about the very nature of our relationship to media, that it's essentially not about just representing the world, interpreting the world, presenting your image of the world, but it's always about engagement with the other.
Well, working in a school of media nowadays, the idea of there being a separate idea of participatory media is no longer really a tenable idea, in the sense that so much of media is now participatory, sort of inbuilt by default. The historical work that we've been doing, or the work on representing history, has always been seen as a representational challenge. So tackling it from the new perspective of participatory media allows us to open up a new kind of flank, a new area to explore, a new avenue, in the sense that instead of asking whether the history on screen or history as it's represented through various media is accurate and true and whether it really happened or so on, the questions we can start to ask are different: of who's making it, who's curating it, who's watching it, who's consuming it, why, for what purposes, and what are they doing with it. So that kind of participatory angle is really, really fascinating to start tackling some very old questions now, considering historical film as a sort of subfield began in the 1970s. To start tackling those same questions from a very different angle. It's a really exciting way of dealing with the historical angle, an exciting way of offering new theories and ideas to borrow and apply to the same subjects.
CoLab is the collaboration research network from the University of Lincoln, and we're really interested in developing 21st competencies and skills such as digital literacies, critical literacies, co-inquiry, group problem solving, and we typically work with students from different disciplines working to overcome particular or focus and address particular issues within contemporary society. For our school, participation and participatory media encompasses a range of different areas. For our particular research group, we are interested in how digital technologies can be a point of examination, both integrated as a way of bringing students together in new forms, in novel forms of inquiry, but also as the critical point of debate of which we're looking at. So in our recent project, Web We Want, we worked with students from all three colleges to focus on the issue of surveillance and privacy online. So we thought that this was a real complex social problem which didn't have any clear-cut answers. So this is why we thought it would be great to bring students from different colleges together to work on this.
The project that I'm working on at the moment is one of a bunch of projects that go under the acronym of Emoticon, Empathy and Trust in Online Communications. And the project is investigating the ways that trust and empathy figure in the kind of communications that people engage in on the internet. And my project is looking at people who might be in risky, dangerous situations, experiencing precarious life circumstances, and the way in which they turn to the internet to find the information that will help them deal with what they're doing at that particular moment in time, perhaps what they're thinking of doing, what decisions should they make, sharing with others life experience stories, new knowledge that they may have found from somewhere else that's relevant to somebody's particular situation. And more precisely still, the project that I'm working on is looking at the way that people who use illicit drugs share information with each other in dedicated web forums, in blogs, recovery story sites, post YouTube instructional videos, perhaps. And we're looking at the kind of ways in which people connect with each other around something where they share similarities, where they share similar life experiences. We're looking at what that means to them and the way that those relationships develop in those kinds of contexts.
Participatory media research means that people are being, for the first time, or maybe not for the first time, but in current thinking, theoretical thinking, we are actually taking them seriously. Okay? That means that we've taken a sort of a loop from looking at audiences as passive to audiences as active. But then we are not stopping there. We actually want to see what they do with the media, okay? And how they engage, how they represent themselves. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm more into representation of the ethnic minority, in the mainstream, okay? We know that the population of ethnic minority in the UK is about 10% from the last census. And they still feel that the mainstream media is underrepresenting them, okay? When you go into bigger cities like London, Manchester, Birmingham, you find a lot of people around, cosmopolitan feel. But many of these people still feel that they are excluded from the mainstream society when you look at the media content. So participatory media actually is an opportunity to see how online format is helping to redress that feeling of underrepresentation. So my study is actually following these ethnic minorities into the online platform and seeing how they are taking ownership of their own representation, or even countering negative representation from the mainstream.
Yeah, participation and collaboration is really important in the way in which we teach. It's no longer a matter of a teacher or a lecturer standing up in front of a group of students. Really, we're part of a collaborative team where students' opinions and students' work is just as valid as ours, really. We're exchanging information, we're exchanging learning, we're growing together. Certainly at the hospital, working with the project at Rampton, we very much engage with that. There's always been the case of a prisoner and a member of staff, a prisoner and a kind of a guard, for example, or a nurse and a patient. We're very much a production team, so we value each other's professional opinions. Both the patient and the member of staff work together, and I think that really helps both sides. It helps us as staff to engage and be empathetic with that patient, but it also enables patients to have value in their own performance. A patient values their ability to produce a piece of work as a professional.
I'm Andrew Kerr. I'm a research assistant on the Everyday Lives and War project, and we're looking at cartoons specifically by prisoners of war in South Lincolnshire and how they reflect the everyday life of POWs who were brought from the front lines during the First World War and kept here on the home front for the duration of the war up until 1919. And the different elements that these cartoons, as a sort of a record of life there, show us about the mentality and the attitudes of prisoners in this sort of underdeveloped research avenue.
Participatory means to me that, well, everyone can be involved, and it's not just academics and a certain class of society. And our project, which is slightly different from the other projects because it's historical, is looking at the subject area, which is comics, and it's a very participatory medium, especially at the comics that we've looked at. We've looked at comic strips and trench publications which were drawn by soldiers in the First World War for other soldiers. So it's very grassroots, participatory, and it gives us the view of the person on the ground, and it's not an officer's viewpoint, it's the private's viewpoint, and it's immediate as well, it's spontaneous. It's not someone's memoirs that are written 20 years after the war's ended. So we really get a sense of how people were feeling at the time.